My name is Valery Ciamiboli. I'm a Director of Customer Success here at Upshop. I have over 16 years of retail experience, also at Giant Eagle. So I am pleased to welcome to the stage with me this afternoon a former colleague of mine, Laura Miller, Director of Retail Inventory at Giant Eagle. And although Laura and I have worked together at the corporate office, we never really had the opportunity to work closely together. One of the things that I found out recently was during all the craziness of the pandemic, when I was running e-commerce operations and we were scaling up, we frequently had to call on some of our corporate team members to come out into the stores as we were scaling up to meet demand. And Laura was one of a very few speedy corporate in-store pickers. So she is got some impressive pick rates. So she's a woman of many talents. So I'll let Laura introduce herself and tell us a little bit about Giant Eagle.
Thanks, Val. So I'm Laura Miller. I've been at Giant Eagle for 14 years. I am currently the Director of Retail Inventory Management. We're headquartered in Pittsburgh. Our primary markets are, Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Indiana, and then Maryland. Ironically, my first role at Giant Eagle was actually in quality assurance, food safety. So I actually used ADC product when I was in that role and helped roll out Nutrigen. And then I decided that I really liked working with the stores. So a fresh item manager role actually came up at Giant Eagle utilizing Periscope. And so I moved over to that department and was the lead to roll out Periscope in regards to production planning and markdowns, and then ultimately ordering in all of our fresh departments.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about waste elimination strategy via Markdowns. Upshop has recently partnered with Giant Eagle, who was the first customer in North America to implement the Waste 360 connected solution. So we were just thrilled to have Laura again on stage with us today. And of course, this was after many successful launches for Waste 360 in Europe, but just want to acknowledge Giant Eagle for being really a pioneer in this space. But before we do that, I just want to kind of dive into really an academic exercise. What's the secret sauce to an optimal markdown? Really, it boils down to the following. It's a retailer's markdown strategy should provide data-driven answers to 4 questions. You want to select the right products in the right locations at the right times and at the right price. That sounds very simple, right? But when you want to identify the items to mark down, a retailer should compare an item's performance against plan. And a simple comparison can help merchants easily identify which items in the category or department are overperformers versus underperformers. Sounds simple. Again, moving on to location, you would want to ideally take that analysis either store by store, or sometimes you might want to look at it by region. And then finally, you want to look at the final 2 questions. Are you looking at it at the right price and at the right times? So all of these things obviously are way more complex than those 4 questions make it seem. So enter the dawn of AI, and that's where Waste 360 comes into play. So now I'll turn the question over to Laura. There are many competing projects that a retailer must prioritize in a given year. So how did Waste 360 make it onto the roadmap?
So I would say, as the person who initially rolled out barcode replacement markdowns in our buildings back in 2018, one of the first things I came back to at the time, it was obviously InfoFresh, right? Upshop team was, I need somebody to tell me what this percentage should be. The data's in there, I need someone to tell me, right? Since then, what we've been doing is my team actually looks at the data every single month. And we go by top items and we actually adjust things seasonally, right? Roasts and steaks obviously need a deeper discount throughout different times of the year. So looking at seasonality and making adjustments with our merchants. Some of our products only need to be at a 10% markdown and they can sell through at 90%, right? Whereas some products need to be at 20, 25%. So since then, I've been asking for somebody to kind of come up with the solution. So as soon as it was something that was able to look at and to pilot, we were really excited to pilot together because we knew that the benefits were far greater than what we could do from a manual standpoint.
And you also considered the fact that you had already had the data in FRP, so this was really a low lift for IT.
100%. So we are currently in the process of upgrading from Periscope into FRP. So you can see there's nobody from IT up here with me today. That's because they really didn't have to do very much.
I did ask the IT person from Giant Eagle to sit on the panel and he declined, so.
Yeah, so pretty much it was really simple, right? So we really, because they already had access to all our data, all we had to do was set up the parameters within the system and then really just roll it out and train the stores was really the biggest things we had to do. The other thing to call out, obviously, we've been partners for a very long time. So that was something that also appealed to us, makes it a lot easier for me from a business standpoint to have one vendor to kind of go with. And we also know the level of support we're gonna get with that vendor also helps tremendously.
Yeah, so those are two things that we like to hear as the vendor, is that there is a trusted partnership there and the ease at which they could move forward with this implementation. Great answers. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So obviously the overarching goals of a successful markdown program are gross margin and sell-through. But what does it take to enable that? Really, I think it comes down to four things: a dedicated team, which it sounds like you have, strong capabilities in forecasting, advanced analytics, expertise, and in-store execution excellence. How did Giant Eagle consider those factors when deciding on Waste 360?
Yeah, so we obviously looked at the main KPIs, right, to make sure that we were good from a pilot standpoint, but really we listened to our in-store employees, right, and what they felt like the system was giving to them and how easy it was for them. I would say it's probably one of the easiest things that I've implemented. Our users were already really good at completing markdowns and getting everything in there. And it really wasn't something from a compliance standpoint that I had to push hard to make sure that they were following.
And then I guess one of the third factors that weighs in today is sustainability goals. And we know this is big in Europe, but also at Giant Eagle, you have stated on your website publicly that you have set a goal for zero waste as defined by the EPA by 2030. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. So ultimately, why Waste 360? Many software vendors are competing to solve the waste problem in different ways, whether it's better ordering, innovative shrink saves like flash food. What have you done before? Were you looking at other vendors? What was the ideal solution for you?
Yeah, so at the basics, we're really trying to get back to the basics from an inventory management standpoint. It includes, all those key things around automated ordering, making sure we have the right automated ordering systems, our inventories are accurate, we're following production planning, and we're having the correct options in the toolbox for our team members. So we want to be able to make sure that we're giving them the correct tools to be able to accomplish their tasks that they need to do. And then, as I already spoke through, right, for our in-store markdowns, I really wanted, which means we really wanted, an AI-driven program to ensure that we were giving the right discounts in stores for all products, right? So that manual process I spoke through, that was something that we can only go global with, right? I didn't have the manpower to get down to store specific, but with AI, that's getting down to store specific, even day specific, right? So that's a huge thing. And then our in-store program has been strong for years, right? I talked about that. We've seen a 70% sell-through rates throughout that, and we've been able to, increase those and have good progress with this.
And I think it's important to note that when you did decide to pilot Waste 360, we were competing with someone else head to head, so a bake-off.
Yes. So as I spoke through, everybody was pretty aware I really wanted to get to AI. So we actually were partnering with Wasteless. We had rolled them out to all of our meat departments. We were on for about, I think, almost a year before Upshop came and said, hey, we'd like to pilot. We had already made the decision internally that we really wanted to get AI to all departments, not just from meat. We obviously did meat for the benefits off of that department quickly. But what we did then is we did have a bake-off between the two and ultimately decided to go with Upshop.
Okay, great. So how has the Waste 360 tool been received at store level in terms of adoption and engagement, things like that?
Yeah, so our store teams speak very highly, right? It's super easy to use, very intuitive, great engagement. They like the features in there. So with this, there's also some new capabilities that we didn't have previously with Periscope markdowns with multiple reason codes, right? So you have close to expiry. Obviously, that's going to be where the majority of your markdowns are going to come from a perishable department. But then there's also split packed and damaged and discontinued, right? And you are allowed to set those thresholds. So you have control of that, right? So if it's a close to expiry, you may only want to mark that down up to 30, 35%. If this is an item that's damaged, you probably want to give that a deeper discount. So with having those different layers in there, when they pick those reason codes, you kind of already have set those thresholds to allow the system to get to. So it also allows for a greater experience for the guests too, right? Whenever there are those products that you're trying to get out of quicker.
Yeah, some of the things I heard when I was in stores during the pilot in comparison to the competitor was that, we don't lose connectivity, it's easier to log in, little things like that sound little but are actually big in terms of the adoption, and that adds up. And if you can get the store teams to buy into it, it really does a lot for adoption. And I think I talked with a deli team leader who said, my night person picked it up I didn't have to train them. They were just able to roll with it. So intuitive UI.
So I would say with that, so as I spoke to, we're rolling out FRP. We actually have training tomorrow. And so we're going to be full chain by Memorial Day. And with FRP, the markdowns have been so easy and people have been picking up on them so quickly. We're literally just rolling it in together. So it's just an added thing so that they can just quickly get that training and go live all in one.
Awesome. And how are customers responding to the change? Have they noticed?
So I would say there's been a little bit of feedback, right? Not a ton. I've heard just from a few stores, a few customers, right? You are going to have those guests who do have a very tight budget. So if you've been marking down something at 50% all the time and now it's only 18% off or 36% off, where that sweet spot is, you are going to have some of those guests that, do notice that. It's been so minimal that I haven't had to put any talking points out for retail, where I thought that potentially I was going to have to put talking points out to talk through that. But it's been so minimal that I haven't even had to create those. But overall, I would say that no feedback is good feedback, as the slide says.
So great, you've had strong sell-through of the markdowns continuing. What about your flash food partnership? Could you talk a little bit about that, and how has Waste 360 maybe impacted that?
Yeah, so we started partnering with Flash Food back in 2020. So the main reason why we started partnering with them was to be able to mark down items that we couldn't do with Periscope. So things that attracted us really were produce boxes, right, that get a hold of that loose produce. And also there were some areas that the merchants didn't want to mark down when things were in line. And so being in Flash Food, being separated out of the department, they were much more inclined to allow us to mark it down if we were taking it out of the department and putting it into the Flash Food application.
And then going back to that stated sustainability goal, do you plan to use Waste 360 to maybe impact your attaining that goal?
Yeah, there's definitely talks in it. Because we're only currently in 19 of our stores in the full departments, we haven't mapped out exactly what that's going to look like, but it's definitely something that the sustainability team is really excited about, and glad that, from a shrink perspective, we're driving that for them and going to help them with that goal.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting, and really, again, you're blazing a trail here. I think that's really really amazing. So I guess the big question on everybody's minds is, where do you see value across the store?
So I think that we need to speak in, these are very preliminary. These are from whenever we were really just kind of out of pilot. In regards to single sale increase, we had double-digit reduction in known loss. I think the big one for me that I had to explain a few times was that markdown sales dollars actually decreased by almost 5% in our pilot locations, and then our control stores actually increased, right? So our sell-through increased, but our markdown dollars that we were actually having to sell decreased, right? It kind of took a little bit of time for everybody to get through that, but right, we were able to achieve that higher sell-through with lower markdown dollars going through. So it was a nice win overall.
Good, yeah. It is a little bit to wrap your brain around the numbers, but that's great. And I know that typically it is still early in your rollout, and the pilot just ended, maybe 8 weeks ago, Bill? I know Bill's been tracking this closely for Giant Eagle. But typically, I know with the Europe team, the numbers that we typically see in sales over time are 12 to 17% lift. So we'll continue to be tracking this closely with you. So great results. So what's been your decision about rolling out Waste 360 for Giant Eagle?
Yeah, so really it was around just finding the right AI-driven markdowns, and we think we found them, right? We've really listened into what our store associates were telling us, and their feedback was really one of the driving reasons why we decided to move in this step. But I would say that, also getting out to all of the departments now, I would say I've actually learned a lot. I didn't realize that the other merchandising desks and also the store associates wanted to get to AI markdowns in their departments. I would say that's kind of been something that's been intriguing to me.
So they're asking for it.
Yeah, they're asking for it, so.
So you took it beyond meat and now you're rolling it out
Everywhere.
everywhere. So you're going to be in full chain by Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, fantastic. So any surprises along the way? Any insights you could share with as we wrap this up?
Yeah, so I would say a most recent surprise was that right as we're talking about these conversations come up in different discussions that I'm not a part of in the organization. So our reset team for our non-perishables, our center store, recently reached out to me and said, hey, heard you're doing something with markdowns. Could we maybe look at utilizing that data to actually feed in and help us with our resets so that we can get out of that product in the correct amount of time prior to when the reset is actually going to occur. So there's been kind of those wins. The other thing that I would say is, just making sure that everybody is aware of it, right? And that change and getting out of that kind of that back habit, right? They've been utilizing this old system for quite some time. And there's some rules in here, right? So I spoke about there are different reason codes. There are also different rules in there that you can apply and kind of hold stores to exactly what you want them to be doing.
Yeah, making sure they're sticking to the parameters.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, I think that wraps up our dialogue. We'll open it up for questions. If anybody has any.
Two questions. What is Flash Foods? You said you have a partnership with Flash Foods, I think it was. What is that?
So Flash Foods, how I would say it, Flash Foods is an online markdown program. So it's a separate application that consumers purchase the markdown product off of, and you put it in kind of a separate zone in your store.
And then the AI, if you don't have any kind of markdown program now, is the AI data something that is specific to your stores, or is it where does the information come from that AI acts on?
It's a separate app. It's a totally separate program that they partner separately with Giant Eagle.
So it's not, is it Giant Eagle data? Or I mean, so if I wanted to start this next, if I wanted to roll this out and I didn't have any data to feed it from the past, could I still do it, or would I need to actually have a markdown program of some kind before I did this?
Yeah, no, it would take your item movement history, whether it was on promotion, markdown. If you didn't have markdown history, that's fine. It'll take your item history, sales history, and look at it and devise a markdown that's appropriate for that item by store, by item, by time for that specific item. And then over time, which won't be very long, 4 or 6 weeks, it'll get smarter and learn from the actual markdowns and start adjusting. So, but as long as you have sales history, we'll use that sales history to inform.
I think the question is, though, if you had a Waste 360 in place first, you may not need a Flash Food program. Yeah.
My question is, it sounds like you just wrapped up your pilot 8 weeks ago, or 8 weeks ago. How long was your pilot? Because it looked like you were already seeing pretty good success within your dashboard. So how quickly did you see ROI as you piloted within the stores?
I'm adding, I think it was 8 to 10 weeks.
I think it was 10, yeah, 10 weeks.
And how quickly within that window did you start seeing and seeing those compelling numbers? Because it's a shorter pilot, and it looked like you started seeing some fast. So just wondering kind of when you started to see that and how quickly that was.
We were able to prove out the ROI within the 10 weeks.
Yeah, I would say about 4 to 6 weeks is probably when we started to see. think we're good with questions, but I want to say one thing that I forgot to say, that the merchants like, and I saw our VP of Fresh, so it made me remember that they like this, is that there are rules in the system, right? So for anybody who's utilizing like Periscope Markdowns right now, right? You have rules, probably policies that say, hey, you should mark down 5 days out or 10 days out or today, whatever those rules are. But there isn't anything in the system to block them from marking down 2 weeks out, right? If they want to get out of that product, they just do the barcode replacement and they get out of the product. With Waste 360, there's actually parameters. So you'll set all of that into the system. So mattering on what kind of item it is, you'll say it can be marked down 2 days out, it can be marked down 5 days out. So you kind of also start to control and make sure that those team members in the stores are following your policy exactly how you want them to follow it. So it's a huge win from that, right? Because obviously we know those rules are set up so that we're marking down where the merchants think we need to be marking down, and allows us to hopefully get some more of those full sales instead of only selling at that markdown.
That's great. Definitely gives a lot more control, so you're not having as much wild, wild west out there in
Yes.
retail. Any other questions? All right.